Socialism states that you owe me something simply because I exist. Capitalism, by contrast, results in a sort of reality-forced altruism. I may not want to help you, I may dislike you, but if I don't give you a product or service you want, I will starve. Voluntary exchange is more moral than forced redistribution.
Okay, so, like, are you ready to get into, like, some deep stuff?
Oh, it's what for a good thought-provoking session, yeah.
Right. So today we're diving into this quote by Ben Shapiro, and it's really about how we think about, like, I don't know, helping others and how society should work, economics and stuff.
Oh, yeah, Shapiro's always good for stirring the pot a little.
Right. And this quote's like from his book. It's called Pasted Text. And it's one of those things you read and you're like, wait a minute, hold on. Like, what does this actually mean for how things work?
I can see that. I mean, he doesn't shy away from strong opinions, does he?
No, not at all. So basically, like, he's comparing these two big ideas, right? You've got socialism, where, just existing means everyone has to, like, chip in and take care of you. And then there's capitalism, where he talks about this reality-forced altruism. I mean, what is that even supposed to mean?
Reality-forced altruism. Yeah, it's definitely a catchy phrase. And I think what he's getting at is that even if people aren't, like, actively trying to be good, a system like capitalism can actually, like, push them to do things that help other people.
So even if someone's, like, totally selfish, they still end up doing good.
Well, yeah, in a way. Because think about it, right? Like, a business owner, to make money, they have to sell something that people actually want. Like, they're not just giving things away out of the goodness of their hearts.
Yeah, okay. So it's kind of like that whole invisible hand thing.
Exactly. It's like Adam Smith's invisible hand. Like, everyone's looking out for themselves, but it somehow ends up benefiting everyone else too.
Okay. But this forced part, that's what's tripping me up a little.
Yeah. It's an interesting word choice. I mean, it kind of suggests that even if someone, maybe has some biases or prejudices, like, even if they don't really want to help certain people, they kind of have to in order to, to succeed in a capitalist system.
Okay, I guess I can see that. But can you give me, like, a real life example? Because it's easy to be cynical and just say, come on, everyone's just greedy.
I hear you. Okay, well, imagine a landlord, right? And let's say this landlord, like, maybe they have some personal prejudices, like maybe they'd prefer to rent only to people of a certain background.
Yeah.
But if they're in a capitalist system, they want to make as much money as possible, right? So they can't afford to be picky. They have to rent to whoever's qualified and can pay the rent, even if it's someone they wouldn't normally, choose to interact with.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I guess, like, their own self-interest kind of forces them to be more open. But what about, like, when this whole reality-forced altruism thing doesn't work? Like, what about those situations where the market doesn't actually provide, things that people really need?
Oh, absolutely. There are definitely cases where, just letting the market do its thing doesn't quite cut it. Like, think about healthcare, right?
Yeah.
Or affordable housing. In a lot of places, just the desire to make a profit isn't enough to make sure everyone has access to those things.
Right. So then you end up needing some kind of, like, government help or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's when you start getting into debates about, government intervention and social safety nets and all that.
Okay, so this actually ties into another part of Shapiro's quote. He says that voluntary exchange is more moral than forced redistribution. So I guess what he's saying is that, like, donating to charity is better than paying taxes.
That's the gist of it, yeah. He's tapping into a pretty core principle of libertarianism, which is all about maximizing individual freedom. So from that perspective, if you choose to give to charity, that's seen as a good thing because it's your choice. But if the government takes your money through taxes and then uses it to, help people, that's seen as less moral because it wasn't your choice.
I mean, I can see where he's coming from, but isn't there, like, a flip side to that? Like, what about things like, I don't know, protecting the environment or public health, like things that affect everyone, not just the individual?
Right. And that's where things get really tricky because, if everyone always acts in their own self-interest, some things can fall through the cracks. It's that classic tragedy of the commons, right? Like, if everyone's just taking and taking, eventually there's nothing left.
Yeah. So, like, sometimes you need some kind of, I don't know, collective action, even if it means, some people have to do things they might not necessarily choose to do.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance. Like, when does individual freedom need to be, maybe limited a little bit for the sake of the greater good?
So, I mean, it sounds like we're saying that neither like pure socialism nor pure capitalism is really the answer.
I think that's a fair assessment. And, that's why most countries have landed on some kind of mixed economy, where you have, the market doing its thing, but also some government involvement to address those areas where the market maybe doesn't work so well.
Right. And it's like every country's trying to figure out like where that line is, like how much freedom versus how much, I don't know, control or help from the government.
Exactly. And there's no easy answer, right? Each country has its own history, its own values, its own set of problems. So what works in one place might not work in another.
Yeah, it's complicated stuff. So as we're kind of wrapping up here, I feel like we've just scratched the surface, like we've raised more questions than answers.
But maybe that's the whole point.
Maybe it is, yeah. Like Shapiro's quote, even if you don't agree with everything he says, it makes you stop and think, okay, how do we actually want society to work? What's the role of the individual? What's the role of the government? Like, these are big questions.
They are big questions, and they're questions that, every generation has to grapple with. It's a constant conversation.
I guess that's the biggest takeaway. Like, there's no easy solution, no one right answer, but by, talking about it, thinking about it, listening to different perspective, maybe we can, like, inch a little closer to figuring it out.
To a world that works a little better for everyone, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to leave it.
I think so, too.
Yeah.